Hey, is this thing on? Hello? Hit it again. I think it's on now. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, where each week, Doc will drag some colorful characters out of the woods to talk trail and Type 2 fun. If you're aspiring hiker trash, or if you're just looking to understand the hiker trash in your life, look no further. So lace up those boots, gnaw on some jerky, and settle into your 20-mile pace as we fire up the podcast from somewhere deep in the backcountry. It's time to embrace the suck.
Ding, 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 ding.
Hey, is this thing on? Hello? Hit it again. I think it's on now. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, where each week, Doc will drag some colorful characters out of the woods to talk trail and Type 2 fun. If you're aspiring hiker trash, or if you're just looking to understand the hiker trash in your life, look no further. So lace up those boots, gnaw on some jerky, and settle into your 20-mile pace as we fire up the podcast from somewhere deep in the backcountry. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail, dirtbags, hiker trash, and of course, those good-smelling day hikers. I'm Doc, and this is Hiker Trash Radio. Hey, if you like what we're doing over here, help us out. Take just a minute, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you don't like what we're doing, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. Well, constant listener, we have a very special episode for you today. As you are listening to this, the 2025 Barkley Marathons are now underway, and to commemorate that, we have the creator of the Barkley Marathons with us to give us some insights into this one-of-a-kind ultra. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, the Leonardo da Vinci of pain, Lazarus Lake. How's it going, Laz?
Things are going well.
Fantastic.
Hopefully if this is during the Barkley, hopefully it is snowing in the process of dropping 14 inches or so on the course.
Diabolical. That is just cruel right there. Because we know when the weather gets involved with the Barkley, it's very doubtful there's going to be any finishers.
Yeah, and the odds are against the runners this year because there was a mass finish last year.
Yes, I have a question for you on that a little bit later. We're going to get to that. Now, I introduced you as Lazarus Lake. You were born, of course, Gary Cantrell. What should I call you during the episode? Do you have a preference?
I really don't. Since it looks like it's just me and you, although I did hear some other voice out of nowhere just a moment ago. I'll know you're talking to me.
Okay. And how did you come by Lazarus Lake? I heard there was a story about an accidental email. Is that what happened?
Well, no, not exactly. It's the whole email story. When email started, you had an email at work. And so you had your work email with your name or your title, or your name and your title. And then people started getting personal email accounts, and start getting personal email in your work email. And after a while, I realized, that's too much personal email in my work email. So I made my own email account, and when it came time, I typed in my name first. And then I thought, nah, I don't fully trust email. I don't mind risking my work stuff because that's work's problem. So I just thought I'd pull a name out of the air and put it in there, and that way the few people I emailed, they would know who that was, and they'd know where it came from. And if someone was snagging this out of the air, it would not be a clue where it came from. And then I forgot about it. You got your first social media, which was the email list, and I joined on the ultra list and would type stuff and didn't really think about it that much until one day I realized most of the people thought my name was Lazarus Lake.
And how did you decide upon Lazarus Lake? Where did that come from?
I was doing a journey run in the, I guess, mid-'80s and saw that name in a phone book. Sometimes, these days on journey runs, there's not a second to spare, but when you can actually run, journey runs go faster. And sometimes I would be in some $20 hotel room somewhere on the side of the road. You can't really do anything because it's just you on foot, and you really need all your steps on the road if possible. So you look in a phone book, these little small towns you pass through, they always have some unique names. The Bobos in Moore County, and the Baggots in Erin. And so I just looked and I saw that name in the phone book, and unfortunately I have a tendency to just remember everything except people's names that I actually know. And so when I was thinking of a name, that one popped into my head and I put it in there.
And
hopefully, I never thought that the name would get out. Hopefully the real Lazarus Lake never hears this. And
I was just going to ask that. Do you think that the real Lazarus Lake has any idea that his name has been co-opted into an association with one of the most popular cult-like races out there?
I actually Googled the name to see, and I think that he was an older guy in '85 and is now no longer with us. But yeah, he had a cool name.
Couldn't let that go by the wayside. Absolutely had to use that. Now, Laz, tell us about your running background, because I know that you were a runner. You are a runner. How did you get involved in running?
I started running when I was 12 because this was in the early mid 60s. And they had some kind of a newscast about this family in Texas that did a thing called jogging. And I think that really created the first running boom. And my dad and his friends would go down to the track and run a mile. So I went with him and actually could beat my dad at a mile. The one evidence I have that I'm not the slowest person ever born is that I at least was faster than my dad.
Nice.
And so if you can beat your dad at something, then you must be a runner. And I always fancied that, deep at heart, I could run forever.
And when was your first marathon?
Would have been 1976, the Jackson Marathon. I can't remember their real name now, but in Jackson, Tennessee. I had a brilliant plan because I could do a 70-minute 10-miler in practice, and it was like I'd done nothing. That was a day off, was a 70-minute 10-miler. And I could run 15 miles really, really good. And I thought, well, if I do the 70-minute 10-miler and then let her rip, I should be perfect. And my friends in running back then encouraged me that this was a brilliant idea, which of course it's actually suicide. But I went through 20 miles really fast.
You know, I've heard it said that the first 20 miles of a marathon is the easier half.
Yeah. It was probably half the time there. At 20, I thought I was going to run like a 250 to 255, and I think I ended up with about a 320. So you can fill in the blanks on what happened in that last 6 miles.
That's right. And did you ever then extend that further and start getting into ultras?
I guess in the later in the 70s, I started doing 30-mile training runs because I thought that would take the teeth out of the last part of the marathon. And which is a pretty good plan when you're running a race and it's the furthest you've ever been. The last part's a struggle because you're running at the limit of what you're built to do. So doing 30 to 35 mile training runs made it easier. I still thought the idea of racing a ultra was insane, but by the end of 1978, I knew I needed to run an ultra because I was obviously not going to achieve actual mediocrity at the marathon.
And was there an ultra in your area, or did I understand you had to create your own?
That's where the strolling gym came from. The only thing, the closest races were either in Miami or New York City. I did get to know Nick Marshall, which was a huge thing. He's one of the really great figures of those days in ultramarathon running. And Atlanta had a 50-miler the year before, but when I contacted them, they said they were canceling it because they only had 4 entrants the previous year. So I started the strolling gym out of desperation.
And how long was the strolling gym?
Ended up being 41.2 miles. We just called it a 40-miler because, round figures work. The strolling gym 40 sounded better than the strolling gym 41.2. And it was really just a bunch of my favorite training courses strung together into a big figure 8.
And was that your first experience in race directing or race creation?
Well, I'd organized a 10K and then I think it was prior to that we did the 2-bit marathon, which was actually 29 miles to make a really good course. It couldn't be exactly 26. So we wanted the really good course. I found out marathoners are less flexible about distance than you would expect.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, was what did the runners say about 29 instead of 26.2? Because when they come up to about 26, they're expecting the race to end pretty soon, and they've got another 3 miles.
But only one big climb. So it was virtually over. They weren't as flexible. There are still people that have a sense of humor, and they got the joke. But a lot of them were, hey, I just ran a 3:17 and I'm a 2:45 marathon runner. Something is severely wrong.
Something is a little off. Now, I just want to go through...
I didn't say certified marathon. I didn't say it was certified. Although you could certify it because it's not short.
Yeah, it's marathon-esque. It's in the area of being a marathon.
It's like a 50K. It's more of a marathon than an ultra, depending on how you approach it.
And I just want to run through real quick some of the other races that you have created, just to give a glimpse into your personality and the creative approach you've taken to organizing races. So that was the what was it called again? The walking gym?
The strolling gym. It's named after a horse.
Strolling gym. Yeah. I had it in my notes as the Tennessee walking horse.
Yes, strolling gym was the first world grand champion Tennessee walking horse. And because I was starting a foot race in walking horse country, I just thought that name would be of more interest to the local people, garner a
Yes.
little more support.
So that was in 1979, and as you said, it was 41.2 miles, the first ultra in the region. In 1986, you came up with the Barkley Marathons, which I'm going to say is about 100 miles now. It wasn't that long back then. And that was named after Barry Barkley, your neighbor and running buddy. And we're going to talk about that race more in depth in just a little bit. But I'm just going to go through some of the other races that you've created. In 2006, a short little jaunt of 314 miles, the Vol State Ultramarathon.
Yes, it's
And then
100 pi, because we wanted to say that we truly have a race that is an irrational distance.
that makes sense now. 314, 100 pi. Pi being 3.14. Very irrational, I would imagine. And then in 2011, you came up with my latest fascination, the Backyard Ultra. I've talked to a number of folks that have participated in the Backyard Ultra, including the team championships. I've talked to each one of the 3 Belgians who set the record this most recently. And that is just a fascinating format, because you're running 4.167 miles every hour until there's only one person left running. And so it's that concept of stepping up to the line and having no idea what the total distance is going to be when all is said and done. You just know it's going to be 4.167 miles at a time, which is just a very a different approach to a race.
It turns out that it's really like a whole different running sport. It's not at all like running time for distance, and it's not like running distance for time. And it's turned out to be fun for people at all different levels. It's not an intimidating demand on you physically, unless you want to win. And it's obviously an incredibly effective way to cover a huge distance. But for the competitive runners, it's the fun that it's sudden death overtime every hour.
Yeah, I think the Belgians ended up going 458 miles.
Yeah, they went 110 laps, which is 2 hours past 4.5 days. And people just keep extending the distance. Humans are pretty amazing. They've taken this simple race that no one knew how to run just 12, 13 years ago. And they have refined their technique for training and preparing and executing the event to go really far.
And then your most recent creation. Go ahead, Laz.
I was going to say, when Harvey won the World Individual Championships with 108 hours just a year ago, he's from Cincinnati, and what he did was the equivalent of getting up one day in Cincinnati and running to Atlanta in one run. It's
bonkers.
That's hard to
crazy.
fathom. It's crazy.
Yes. And then your most recent creation, I believe, in 2015 was Race for the Ages, where each participant runs the number of hours that corresponds to their age. And then at the end of that time frame, the person with the most miles is the winner.
Yeah, I was thinking about it because that not only myself, but a lot of my old friends, people who were not just mediocre, but were actually good, we can't any of us make time limit cutoffs anymore. It's not some, I don't even think it's as much your age as just the beating you've taken. And so I was looking for a race where they could take aim at getting one more 100-miler where that they could make the time limits. And that idea came in my head, and I thought, the more I thought about it, I thought that might work. And so I took all these age-graded performance charts and stuff and kind of did calculations off of that. And I thought, this is really pretty close to even. And it has been huge fun. The oldest winner, I think, was 75, and the youngest winner was 49. And you always end up with the same thing. You end up with young guys who are trying to chase down these old guys who they may be beat up and not that fast, but they're going to make you earn it. And so people still enjoy competition. And then a lot of the guys that can't do that much distance, we still get together and they come out every day and do the miles they can do, and we tell stories about the old days and criticize the of course, inferior runners of today.
Of course. What a great equalizer. Adding on those hours corresponding to the age, that gives you more time, and the young guys have to work for it.
So we have what we do at noon on Labor Day. It's over. So you back up from that to your oldest runner, which last year I think was 92. So 92 hours before that, you have a start, and this one guy goes out all by himself, and he's in the lead. And then if you got a 91-year-old, you have another start an hour later. And every hour you have a start till it gets down to 40. 40 is the cutoff. Everybody 40 and under starts with 40 hours to go, and that pretty much evens it up. But they have a special treat. All of the 40 and under people get a pacifier when they come and check in to start.
The youngsters, it's like the greyhounds chasing down the rabbits on the track.
It is. It's so you have a lot of people lead along the way, and you'll have some old guy that gets in there and by God, he wants to win it.
All right. Hey, let's circle back to the Barkleys, where we're going to spend most of our time today, because it has been an obsession of mine and since it came to my consciousness about 10 years ago. It is a remarkable race, a crazy race. It has gained cult-like following, I would say, over the years. And tell us about how you came up with the concept for the Barkley Marathons.
Well, I got to clarify one thing. I did not create the Barkley. I discovered it. I been a backpacker as long as I was a runner. I loved backpacking in my youth. And unfortunately, after about 60, I think sleeping on the ground quit being fun. I can sleep on the ground just fine, but I have to be near something I can climb up on to get back up. So we had backpacked in Frozen Head before. And every time you backpacked and you looked at the map, you saw these trails around the perimeter that the contour lines looked like shading. And backpackers are not all crazy. It came down to me and Raw Dog were the only ones actually out of the groups that backpacked there that looked at those trails and said, oh, we got to do this. We've got to see what that's like. And when we got out there and hiked them, we found out they hadn't been maintained for obvious reasons since, I think, the 1930s. And it was incredibly challenging from navigating as well as covering ground. When you're on hills that you stick your hand out in front of you, your hand is touching the ground. Those are good hills. And we just, well, maybe not as much but all along I thought, God, what a race this would be. Trail running had just really got to be a huge deal. And when I thought of trail running, I'd have thought of trails more like this. And then you look, I said, they're not running on trails, they're running on footpaths. Footpaths are different. Trails don't have all the leaves brushed aside. So we'll put this together and show them what a real trail is like.
It's almost as you describe. You said you discovered the trail. It's like an artist, a sculptor, releasing the work from the stone, right? You discovered it and you kind of released it into its current form.
I guess but just going around it, you knew. Oh man, people that like to really get out on the edge. This is on the edge, and it's not that remote in real terms because you're in the eastern half of the United States. You're never that remote. But you can feel pretty disconnected from the modern world.
Now, any basis in fact to the story that it was based in part on the James Earl Ray escape from the prison?
No, it was in the same place. When James Earl Ray escaped, I think I was in Memphis then, and I followed it with great interest because, hey, I've backpacked all out in those woods. I know where he's running away to, and it's hell to get around out there. So it was kind of fun to follow. But at the time we did started the Barkley, didn't really even think about that escape. So every year after the race is over, you have to write a race report. And I had happened across an interview in some magazine with James Earl Ray about his escape. And I noticed as I'm reading it, I'm thinking, if you didn't know what the interview was about, you'd think he was talking about running the Barkley. So I thought it would be really comical to take the quotes, not say who they're from until the very end, and intersperse the whole Barkley article with these quotes as if he had run in the actual race. And I still think it was a pretty clever article, but in the world that is, somehow out of that it became like a tribute to James Earl Ray, which the article was probably more making fun of James Earl Ray, but
well, I'm glad
he was pretty naive when he went over the wall.
I am glad we're able to clear that up for our listeners out there. Now, I'm going to go through.
Everyone will still think it's a tribute to James Earl Ray.
I'm going to go through the format of the race and some of the peculiarities, some of the idiosyncrasies with the race. I'm going to pause after each one in case you want to comment. If you don't want to comment, I'll just keep going through the list, and we'll get into some stories and questions about the Barkley. So, I mean, it sounds simple. It is 5 loops around a 20 to 25 mile course in the woods. Now I
20.
say
You can look on the sheet that we give them out every year. It's 20.00.
Now, Laz,
we have a very precise measurement.
Laz, I'm talking to the guy who had a marathon that was 30 miles long. So I've talked to some runners out there, some competitors on the Barkley, and they've told me, man, it did not seem like 20 miles. It seemed closer to 25 miles.
I guess if you had done a 14-hour 20-miler, you would probably like to describe it as more than 20 miles also.
Okay, so 5 loops around a 20-mile course in the woods. Sounds simple, but there is so much more to the race than that. Here are some of the idiosyncrasies with the race that have developed over the years, or maybe they were in place from the very inception. I don't know. Maybe you can clear that up. So there's no published application process.
Yeah, now when it started, we posted it in Ultra Running magazine because the first year there was only 13 people, and it gradually grew to the maximum size, and then it just kept getting more and more until we quit posting it because there were too many people we had to turn away.
So much mystery with this race. There's no published start date or start time. That's a big secret as well.
Yeah, we don't want spectators. We've done a lot of everything is calculated out to maximize the people we can get in. The campground area with 40 people and 40 crew members, and the something like four people on the race staff. Maybe it's 5 now. And that's all that will fit in the campground. And then for the race itself, we followed up each year by going out and checking the impact that we had. Because what we didn't want to do is get to a point where that we like blazed a huge trail into the woods. And we could handle around, I want to say, 100 laps, 90 to 100 laps. So to put in 40 runners, we need only a certain number of elite and a certain number that have a chance at the fun run, and a certain number that one loop will be a huge achievement, which is really nice because it gets runners at all levels of ability. It's not all levels of experience. Everybody that gets in there, they're a good accomplished runner, but not everybody's fast. So we go for a mix that hits between 90 and 100 laps. And we pretty much nail it about every year.
Okay. And when runners do figure out how to apply to get into the race and they are accepted in, they get a condolences letter for you. They are required to bring entry cost of $1.60. And then if it's a returning runner, they're going to bring you a gift of your choosing. And if they are a new runner, they're bringing a license plate from their home state. Is that right?
That's right. This is one of those things that you put in the category. It seemed like a good idea at the time. One year we asked all the runners to bring a license plate from their home state. And we hung them all up around the campsite and said, "Oh, that looks so cool. We should have people every year, the new runners, the first timers, bring a license plate from their home state or country." Not thinking how many license plates that would amount to after another 30 years or so. And now you need like a whole extra day on setup just to hang the license plates.
Seemed like a good idea at the time. Yes.
Well, that's Barkley's trophy case. Because you look and there's a little bitty rotating trophy where that when people finish, they get to put their name on it and keep it for a year, or else it stays with us for another year. And that's the runner's trophy case. Because Barkley has a pretty strong record against the runners.
Yes, it does. Some more mysterious, strange elements about the race. When the race is going to start within an hour, you blow the conch to signal it's an hour from start time. To start the race, you light a cigarette, and we start and we finish at the yellow gate out there. No GPS is allowed. Runners are allowed to copy a map out there. And when they're on the course, to prove that they've been on the course all the way around, they have to pull a page out of a book that corresponds with their bib number.
Yes, all those things seem pretty much normal to me. You may be familiar with aberrant races that don't do those things. But that's pretty much the standard for how races are run, I think.
Yes, that is the normal. All the other ones out there are abnormal. Absolutely correct. And
it's tough being normal because you look around and sometimes you'll realize you're the only normal person in the room.
Many a time I've had that feeling. Yes. And then the runners run the course clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on the year. They alternate loops with clockwise and counterclockwise. And then when they get to the last loop, if anybody gets to the last loop, the first person chooses whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise, and every runner thereafter has to go the opposite direction. So if you've been running in a team or working with others to get through the course, now you're separated, which seems diabolical.
Why? It's actually being generous to allow them to run together to start with. Making them separate on the fifth loop, sometimes it has an impact. And sometimes it's really exciting. We've had them separate, run together for 4 loops, separate on the fifth loop, and come in within 5 minutes of each other. Or as Jim Nelson said, the year he and Mike Tilden ran 4 together, split for the last one. They had not slept the entire race, and with just maybe 5 miles to go, Nelson could take it no more, and he laid down and slept 10 minutes on the side of the trail and then lost by 5 minutes. And he said,
ouch.
That's how it is. You run for 60 hours, take a 10-minute nap, and you lose.
Oh, wow. And there are no aid stations on the course. I think there's 2 water drops, but no aid stations, no assistance on the course. And when a runner drops out, returns and says, I'm not continuing, or comes back after the time limit, they play taps in honor of his dropping out. And all of this has resulted in a race that has only had 26 finishes by 20 runners since 1995. You said earlier, what is on the edge? What is the limit of what humans can do? Oh, it's current format since 1995, right?
No, the race is the same since 85. We just didn't have anyone that had even got to 50. Well, no one got to 50 miles for 3 years. And then it took until 95 before someone finished the 100, because people had it in their mind that it was impossible. So each year the winner would go out there and then add one more book or one more climb. And then they'd come back because in their mind they didn't perceive it being possible. And then Mark Williams came, and he didn't understand that it was impossible. And he actually did it. So David Horton, I remember telling him about the first thing he heard when he got in is, thanks, now you've ruined it for everybody. I used to could go home every year comfortable in the fact that it wasn't possible, so I hadn't failed. And now that you know it can be done, it becomes a failure not to do it.
Yeah, it's all about efficacy, right? Once something is done for the first time, I mean, they say the mile couldn't be run in less than 4 minutes. And then once somebody did it, once Bannister did it, then we got to see, that more frequently. Now that you've had somebody finish the Barkley, then more and more people start finishing it. And you have to then, is it true that when it gets tougher, is it true that when someone finishes, you make the course tougher?
No, actually, we always change the course every year. We make some minor changes here and there. You take something out, you put something different in, and slightly reroute it so that every year there's going to be new stuff, even for the veterans. And we try to keep it right about the same level. And we've got now 40 years of practice at looking at the different sections of the course and thinking about the time you'll run them, and putting it back to where that the times come out, they still are around the same area. If you want to do the 100, you need to finish the first loop right around 8 hours. If you want to sleep, you got to finish it in the 7s.
All right. Laz, let me ask you a few questions specifically about the race. So the Barkley has achieved cult status with fans and followers all around the world. There have been multiple documentaries made about the race, and people incessantly refresh their social media feed to get the next update from Keith Dunn during the race each year. Back in 1986, did you have any idea that this is where we would be 39 years later?
No, not a clue. I'd say by the early 90s, we were starting to get international runners and stuff. I know when we finally got to the documentary happening, people said, "Well, didn't that increase your entries by a huge amount?" And it was, no, the serious entries really didn't change at all, because the people who did stuff like that had already known about it for a long time. The general awareness, the people that have no business out there, it increased those entries.
Okay. And when runners are preparing for this and you're giving them information, there's really no guidance to runners about what to bring, only about what not to bring. So, I mean, most races, those abnormal races out there that are not the Barkley, they include a recommended list of safety equipment. Yet you don't, and there have been no major injuries during the Barkley. Why do you think this is?
Probably because they're more careful, because they're cut loose. Of course, I was one of those people that did stuff like that. And I remember you would have all these requirements. You have to have this, you have to have that. And people would bring a McDonald's Happy Meal toy and say, it meets the requirement for this, and it meets the requirement for that. So it seemed like something of a joke. And I don't think everyone needs the same thing. We do, if when the conditions get serious in the later rounds, we will ask people to be sure that they're equipped enough to bivouac out there until they can either recover and come back, or someone can come and find them. So, and there's a lot of vetting of the people who enter and making sure that they've done stuff where they know what they require. So we haven't, we don't say, if you can come up with the $2,000 entry fee, you are therefore elite. But we're going to have to require you to know that you need shoes.
Yes.
We get people who do know what they're doing.
Yeah. Along those lines, John Fegavarisi, when he was on the podcast and I was talking to him, he said that this race is a race that smart people seem to enjoy more success in. Would you agree?
Yes, there's a lot of problem solving. In putting together the different races that I've done, you like to make them challenging in varying ways. And as a coach and an athlete and in multiple sports over a lot of years, I know the most challenging thing that an athlete can face is uncertainty. And the Barkley is a race where nothing is certain. You don't know the course until you're within 12 to 18 hours of starting. and you don't know the starting time within a 12-hour span. So what do you carry for the first loop? Well, it's a lot different if you start it at midnight than it is if you start at noon. And just if you look at each piece, there's uncertainty. When they're out there on the course, they've got the map that they marked. But the only time you know for sure that you're absolutely right is when you get the next book. There's that brief moment of knowing I am at the right place at the right time. And you put that page in your pouch and stash the pouch away so you don't lose it. And when you walk away from that book, you're not sure again until you get to the next one.
Yeah, the fear of the unknown is huge. The unknown is what produces anxiety, and you have taken this up several different levels of, unknown and ramping up that anxiety. That is fantastic. Now, Laz, how long does it take to prepare from the end of one year of the Barkley and then you planning for next year's Barkley? I mean, how much planning goes in to each race?
You know what? Everybody that has a successful race has the same planning schedule. You start when this year's race ends. It's kind of like a game during a season of ball. If you win a big game, you can celebrate the rest of the day, the rest of the night. But in the morning, you got to start getting ready for the next one. At the Barkley, maybe we carry it further because there's various discussions go on and thinking during this year's race. By the time we leave the campground this year, we'll know what the course changes are going to be, what the race theme will be, and what time it's going to start. And those things will already be set. And then all year long, you're doing a little bit here and a little bit there, and it's always in your mind.
Okay.
This year's
a couple
theme,
of segments. Go ahead.
Well, no, I shouldn't go ahead and let it out. This year's theme is an entertaining one.
Okay.
You always take your theme and you match the book titles. We have a pretty good library, and would like to say anyone that finds appropriate books with great book titles, especially if they're 250 pages or longer, love to have you send them to us and keep that library, because you search through your library for books that fit with the theme. And then you take the titles that fit with the theme and you look at the layout of the course and what time it starts and where you're at, and you fit each book to its location on the trail. It goes over a lot of people's heads, but we have a lot of thinking runners, and they get out there at some point and they read the fourth perfectly appropriate book title in a row and say, they're fucking with us. Because we are.
Of course you are. And Laz, this is not going to air until the race is underway. So if you want to share the theme, you can go ahead and share the theme.
Well, that's what I thought. But then if I tell it to you, it's out there.
It will not get out there, I assure you.
Well, I know, because I'll just sit on it a little longer.
Okay, you keep that to yourself. I want to go through two different segments with you. One is called 7 Questions with Laz. I'm going to ask you 7 questions about the race. They don't have to be long answers, just some short answers here, kind of rapid fire. You ready?
Okay.
Okay, question number 1. What was your favorite pre-race gift?
Impossible to say. Moxie soda. Because I learned I love Moxie, and now I obtain it every chance I get.
I thought it might be Moxie. Question number 2. What is the best book title on the course this year?
That I don't know. My favorite from all time was a final book on the loop that said, "It wasn't always easy, but it sure was fun."
Very appropriate. Question number 3. What was the toughest year on the course?
The toughest year in what way?
Maybe fewest laps completed?
Probably would be the year Ted Kaiser won. Because it came a big snowfall on Loop 2, and he was the first one to get past a place that you could cut back out to the Jeep to Quitters Road and leave the course. And so he went past that point. And then the second person came and the snow was coming down pretty fast. He didn't see any tracks, and he knew, because he could read a map, that I can quit right here, or you drop off the other side, you're off in hell for a long time. So he walked out. The next one behind him saw his tracks leaving and thought, "Oh, it makes sense. Cut out to the road because the snow's getting deeper." By the third one, he just thought, well, everyone's quitting because this snowfall, it can't be done. It's, the only smart thing is to follow everyone else. And one by one, everyone remaining in the race all quit at the same place and came down Quitters Road, except Ted, who went by there before the tracks were laid. And he finished the 100. No one else even finished the fun run.
Wow. And that was in 2003.
But once again, it's what's in your head.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that was Teddy Kaiser. He was a finisher in 2003, so 22 years ago.
Whoa. It seems like yesterday.
All right, question number 4. Are you able to tell us one significant change in the course this year?
Yes, there's a piece that's not in it that was in it last year, and there's a piece in it that wasn't in it last year.
Okay. Very mysterious. Question number 5. What is your funniest story or memory from a race?
From any race or from Barkley?
From any race. Yeah, Barkley.
I tell you, one of my favorites at the Barkley, we were setting out the books. This is way back in the probably late 80s, early 90s. And we're coming down a really steep hill. There's going to be a book at the bottom. And the trees are tall and thin because and we took one of them, me and Raw Dog together. We managed to bend down about a 20-foot tree, and then we put the book in the very top and let it spring back up. So when the first runner's coming down the hill's so steep, he sees the book right in front of him. And then he goes the rest of the way to the bottom, and he walks out there where the book should be, and there's no book. And he looks around and around and around, and he can't find it. And then he realizes how much height, how much elevation he had covered. He looks up, and there's that book 20 feet up in a tree. So that was when he discovered that we had gotten a tree that was exactly right. It takes 2 people to get enough weight to bend the tree down and get the book. So he had to wait on the second runner to arrive and give him a little more weight. It's too skinny to climb and too thick to bend over.
Problem solving at its finest. 2 more questions. Question number 6. What was the most dramatic finish?
You know it's Paris. There's been a lot of dramatic finishes, but that one, we had so despaired. if he had gone the right way, I think, well, yeah, Gary Robbins would have been probably the most dramatic finish. It's certainly at least at that time. But Jasmine, because we knew what time she was left the fire tower, to finish under the time limit, she had to run 3 hours faster on the last section of course than the winner. And we had counted down the time to where it's like if she doesn't arrive in the next minute, she can't finish. And then she made it by 90 seconds, less than a second a mile for 100 miles.
Pretty darn dramatic.
Less than a second a mile for 100 miles at 36 minutes a mile. Can you imagine doing a race where your margin was 1 second out of every 36 minutes?
Absolutely not. Wow. All right. And then last question in this section. As we record this episode, we're still a little ways out from this year's race, but what are you expecting from this year's crop of runners?
I expect to see a lot of them come back on Quitter's Road. Even in the best year, it's not a real high finish rate. I think we have a good solid field of experienced people because that's who we choose. And you have the ones that you think have a shot at finishing the 100. We have several runners that you know they're capable of doing the 100 if everything just plays right. But it's really, there's such a tight margin. There's so little room for error or, you could, it's a race that you could pee one time too many and not finish.
That's right. That was great, Laz. Thank you. Those are great questions, great answers. One more segment for you. I'm gonna call this the name game. I'm gonna go through some names, and I just want you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the name.
Okay.
Okay. Here we go. Mark Williams.
The nap. He laid down and slept after the 4th loop. And he'd already broken new ground. And we sat there watching him sleep for probably 15 or 20 minutes, speculating as to whether he could make it, speculating as to whether he needed someone to wake him up. And even if we thought he needed to wake up, should we wake him up? So Mark Williams in his nap. We still didn't think he would finish, even when he started 5. But
how about Brett Mown?
There's not a single word for it. There's a mental image of how he could skip over terrain, how he could float up hills. He was a light runner, extremely talented, and he brought himself in just superb physical condition. I think that probably the end for him was to be in the shape he's in, you have to train so close to the edge of injury that it's hard to go through a training cycle and reach your target race without something going wrong.
Okay. John Kelly.
The Boy Scout. He came and he looked so fresh-faced and innocent that you felt bad about throwing him out there. And he still looks the same way, and he has retained that innocence, even though he's definitely not innocent. He's just He's just one of those guys that's like that. He's really good. He's a lot better than I would be.
How about Jared Campbell?
Fearless. When I visited him at his home, he has a passive solar wall, the big concrete slab that absorbs the heat, and the windows across from it where the sun comes in to heat it up. And then there's a dot on one of the windows. And every day as the sun passes by, the shadow of that dot passes across the wall. And he made a solar calendar out of it. There's a wavy line that shows where it'll go across on the solstice, and a wavy line that shows where it goes across on the equinox, and then a wavy line for the middle between. And I said, oh yeah, it must have taken a year to mark that. I said, to calculate where that was going to be and then paint the line before you'd seen the sun. I mean, the project itself sounds like something, oh wow, if I thought of that, that would be such a great thing to do. But I would wait and I would trace the line at the equinox and or I might pencil it in and then see if I got it right. None. Jared painted it on the wall before the sun had gone through its cycle. And it's right, because that's the kind of people that finish the Barkley. But to me, the act of painting it on the wall where you'll never get rid of it before you actually saw if you had it right, would you do that?
Absolutely not. No. I have to trace several times. Measure 7 times before I cut once. So, we said earlier about this being a race that very smart people have some success in, and Jared Campbell finished it 4 times. So that doesn't surprise me.
He's also physically tough beyond belief.
How about Carl Sabe?
Calculated. In a lot of ways, he reminded me of Blake Wood in that he set his mind to do this and didn't succeed. But all it made him do was sit down and go over all of his calculations and figure out how he did better. And then I only read somewhere his story of the race that he finished, and not realizing until then how like everybody that finishes, he was just on such a narrow margin for so long, and determined that he's, by God, just getting back to the same thing over and over again. I have to make it. So his was a calculated out, earned, planned. It was a finish. He's a superb athlete and great at doing these physical challenges. But that one, then what was a 3-year job?
Yes. And the last name I'm going to ask you to give me your thoughts on is, of course, Jasmine Paris.
I've been privileged to see a lot of incredible athletic performances in my life. If that one's not the best, I'm not sure where the best lies. Although every Barkley finish has been an incredible achievement. But because of the game plan that she came up with, her race plan was suicide, but it had to be. And then her ability to hang when she's a great navigator. She's really good at covering the ground in the hills. and she has the knowledge to understand the timeline at all times, which meant that she always realized, I have no margin for error. That was from the very first, when the cigarette was lit, she left with no margin for error, and she came back with no margin for error.
Pretty darn dramatic. And Laz, to close us out today, I asked my listeners to send in questions they would like to ask you if they had the chance. So I threw all those questions into a hopper and I pulled one out. You ready?
I know the answer already. I didn't do it. And besides, no one saw me.
This question is from Chris Eagle Eye Anderson. And his question to you is, who hurt you?
God, who hadn't hurt me?
All right. Well, hey, we are finished. I want to thank you for coming on the podcast, Laz. We hope all goes well with this year's race. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with all the folks out there who are obsessed with the Barkley like me?
Well, let's see. Depending on where we are when this happens. Well, it doesn't depend on where we are. At this very moment, if this is playing during the Barkley, there are people who quit a long time ago and they're still not back to camp. Think of the fun they're having.
Yes. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if you're on Loop 5 and some random hiker took the book you're looking for. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.